Howdy, howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast 328. How are you folks all doing? Hey, there are a lot of you I saw this past week at Zaxim Bog in Minnesota, and you were very kind to stop and say hello. You had some very kind words, some great questions, and I just want to thank you for, well, simply doing that, supporting me, saying hello, and all those it's just really I appreciate it. It's really means a lot to me. So thank you so much. Now remember, you can head to the website, go to the podcast blog post. There's a link there that you can send questions. I'm saying that because I think for the first time in all these years, this past week, it's the first week that I did not get any email questions, which it's the beginning of the year. And perhaps you have something better to do, and I can understand that. But just so you know, you want to send me a question, head to that post, click on the link. I'm going to do my best to help you out. I want to thank my good friend Bedford's Camera, bedfords.com. Now, I got a serious question. Don't take it anything other than that. Have you been to the bedfords.com website? I ask because we open up that first page. Man, you can just see the cornucopia of gear, of questions. I was just looking there, and they have a used Nikon Z6 for just $600, $625, some silly price. Did you know they have a really great used department? Yeah, they do. And I highly recommend you head to the website. If nothing else, do what us photographers love to do best, window shop. Or in this case, computer monitor shop, and take a look and see what they've got. I bet they got something that's going to help you out. And of course, remember, you're going to save extra 5% when you mention that special discount MOOSE. So bedfords.com. Thank you, Bedfords, for sponsoring the Moose Podcast and helping us photographers take a little bit better pictures. I want to get right into this week's episode, your secret recipe. Now, a lot of things, bring this up to mind and why I want to talk about it. One is I'll get to it in a second, I guess. I've had some folks talking to me, not send me general questions, but on general discussions, and well, one of them has to do with what I'm doing there at Any Question and quote unquote being an expert and people asking questions. And I had someone ask me about the questions that I'm being asked. And basically, they said in a very, intelligent thing, why people asking you some of those questions where even if you tell them your recipe, to quote them, even if they follow that recipe verbatim, it's still not going to make them a good photographer. And they're right. Okay. They're right. I was thinking about it more and more, and I know it's really hard to ask sometimes the question you need to ask to get the answer you need to get. And I mentioned that many times before, but then looking for that formula, that lens, that software that's going to all of a sudden it's going to take your photography to where you want it to go with this, I think, sometimes very ill-conceived idea of matching someone else, has to do in part with this, what is your secret recipe? I think about a lot of things. I think about, sometimes proprietary, formulas that are in our cameras, for example, are proprietary for a number of reasons. And if you did have that secret sauce, what good is that information going to do you if you don't have the rest of the components, right? There's use one of my favorite analogies. Let's just look up, at food, okay? Kind of continues on where I was talking last week with HelloFresh. So there's a couple browns that I really like to follow in the way I do things. One is is Russell Brown. Did a podcast with him last year, and he has taught me a lot about Photoshop. But as he teaches, the recipes he gives, he's constantly saying you'd have to add your own, personal spice. Another great example is another Brown. That's Alton Brown, and he puts out his food recipes. And I bring that up because right now the one that we're really enjoying is his Dutch baby recipe, which is just delicious. But then he's got all these great accoutrements in the kitchen, which some of them make really a lot of sense, and we've been adding them slowly to our kitchen. But to get to the point, if you listen to both those greats, you listen and you find out pretty quickly that, well, one of the things they stress is that you add yourself to that recipe, be it Russell Brown in the computer or Alton Brown in the kitchen, is adding yourself to that recipe. And I bring that up coming back to that conversation about any question. And some of the questions people are asking, as far as I'm concerned, are almost off the chart, don't make sense to me, and how, even though I'm being 100% honest when I answer those questions, whether you like the answer or not, that reminds me of Garth Brooks' uh, song about God not answering your question that actually, your prayer that actually is the answer you should have is anyway. You know, I answer those questions, and what good is that answer really doing? Even when I'm being 100% honest and I'm giving you that recipe in which I use, there are so many variables to that recipe that, is it really viable? I mean, and the biggest variable, of course, is yourself. So then you look at all this, you boil it down. What's it really mean for you and your photography? It really means the sky's the limit. It means that for your own self, you can really do no wrong. Of course, yes, there's always going to be that self doubt that creeps in. There's always going to be that, what if I'd done this, or I could have done that better. And of course, that's part of being human, it's part of being creative. And well, that kind of brings me to the other part of this conversation. I was watching Sunday Morning yesterday, and AI raised its head again. And they went a little bit into Dali and some of the other softwares, and how they're making things happen. And of course, somebody finally brought up that word copyright. Just a quick, if you haven't don't understanding what's going on, some of those AI softwares that you can buy, or some are free, that you can say banana, cherry, park bench, blah, blah, and you give them these terms, and all of a sudden the computer program draws for you based on the terms you used. Well, where are they getting the information for this AI? Where did it come from? Because right, the computer, like any computer, has to have data, that has a database. How they build a database, of course, is they grabbed a whole lot of stuff, mostly your photographs, my photographs, and artwork that's floating on the web, and then use that as a reference to make their AI. So then, of course, is there copyright infringement? Anyway, getting back to it. With this all said, and people getting upset about AI, so even AI has to have, quote unquote, a secret recipe. But as I just divulged, some of that recipe is actually coming from you, right? So it, it's important, I think, photographers get a grip, for lack of better terms, and understand that the one thing I talk about a lot in this photographic process, time, is really important. To the point of using the analogy of a recipe for food. I, I mean, I still wonder who's the first person who grabbed an egg from a chicken and sat there and stirred the crap out of it, and then poured it into a pan and said, "Oh, scrambled eggs, they're tasty." I gotta tell you that my first inclination would not to be reaching underneath a bird where they get rid of everything came through their mouth, and grab that and say, I wonder if this is a food source, and then scramble it and put it in the fire. Yeah, I just, I can't see myself being that person. But if you think something as simplistic as scrambled eggs, how many variations are there on scrambled eggs? And yes, I know that some hotels free breakfast in the morning, they put something out called scrambled eggs, but you and I both know it's not, okay? And then you can go to some place that has farm fresh eggs and they do nothing but just put it in the right seasoned cast iron skillet with a little butter and it's like, wow. Photography is kind of that same way. Doing it as simply as possible and adding just that one little thing in this one vessel and wow. So why are people concerned about one getting recipes from others and then following them so habitually? B and lastly, worrying about AI when AI still will never have the most important ingredient in any photographic recipe, and that's you. That is, your heart, your passion, what you've done as a photographer, how you want to communicate, how you see the world, what experience you've had up to that point in time that you say, "Ah, I want to say it this way or that way." I mean, seriously, why do photographers worry about getting that secret recipe? And then on the flip side, why do they like to ridicule and ride somebody out of town on a tarred and feathered if they don't give what they perceive as their full recipe and say, well, you're holding back something. Well, even if you give everything to someone, all right, two things are happening, and people have asked me this, and this is the other part of the conversation I was having. And I think it was a heart of the conversation the person was wanted to have with me is they said, they said they went back and they looked at a whole lot of my trivia out there from the last few decades, even prior to quote unquote the web. Looked at an old book and they said, yeah, there's a lot of sarcasm and then there's a lot of smack between the eyes with a two by four, but they said you kind of like have just laid it all out there. You haven't kept any secrets. So why are people worried about getting everybody's secret recipe and having all the secrets when you've been putting it out there and I don't get it. And it could be confusing, but what I explained to him, what I've tried to say, and probably not such a great way, is that let's say I got a new product today, or I talk about a new product today, and I tell you all the great things about this product. And people say, "Why don't you say the negative things?" Well, all you gotta do is look at the news. There's enough negative without me adding to it, right? And there's nothing perfect. I'm not perfect. Gear's not perfect, so get over it. Anyway, I put out today. I announced, I've got this piece of gear. I've added to my bag, and this, that, and the other. So then, in a way, I have just, you could say, I've given away part of the secret recipe or the secret recipe. And why would I do that? Because for myself to have put out that piece of information, be it a technique in the digital darkroom or a piece of camera gear, it means that I have, in my opinion, of already mastered that piece of gear to the point where I've added it to the kit. And so now I'm moving forward. And for me to explain it to you, the first thing is you have to acquire it. And that they're coming back to that time thing again. You have to acquire that something, be it technique, software, hardware. And then you've got to learn it to the point where you can take what I've shared and apply it. At which point, I know who knows how much clock has ticked by, but in that process, what has happened? I have moved on to other pieces. So I'm now working towards and mastering other pieces to add to that kit while you're still if you embrace that idea, still trying to incorporate that into your gear. So I'm already, for lack of better terms, ahead of the game or ahead of you because I've already moved forward from that piece that you're just now acquiring. So why not share information? Why should you have to recreate the wheel that if I've already done it? That's been my philosophy since the very beginning. And at the same time, by telling me everything and putting it out there, and for those things that do intrigue you and you try out, you instantly say, "Oh, Moose did find this, that, and the other, and Moose did give me all the information." And in that process, I keep building that credibility that it's so important to me that I have garnished and nourished for 40 years. That I'm a straight shooter, and one of the reasons is because if I'm not, you're gonna find out really fast I'm not by trying it. So, your secret recipe. Perhaps your secret recipe should be such that you share it. Um, I gotta tell you, I'm thankful to all those delightful ladies who share some great tasting recipes with my sweetie that she bakes up, and I love to consume. And if they kept their recipe secret, I would not have those things to enjoy. So perhaps we should just get rid of this whole secret recipe or recipe and just share not just our photographs, but perhaps the process, and then make it our own. And then we have a recipe we can share. I want to thank you folks for stopping by. The year's going by. We're coming down already, almost the end of the month. I'm here if I can be of assistance, folks. Get out there and shoot. And remember to make every click your story.